Adam and Eve are central figures in the Bible, described as the first humans created by God. According to the book of Genesis, they were shaped directly by the Creator's hands and received the breath of life, becoming the progenitors of all humanity. The biblical narrative reveals that they lived in the Garden of Eden in full communion with God until they disobeyed the divine command by eating the forbidden fruit. This act led to their expulsion from paradise and the introduction of sin into the world. Their children, Cain, Abel, and Seth, gave rise to future generations. But an intriguing question arises. What language did Adam, Eve, and their descendants speak? In this video, we will explore this fascinating question. After the fall, Adam and Eve gave rise to two distinct lineages, one from Cain, marked by violence and rebellion, and the other from Seth, associated with righteousness and faithfulness to God. Cain, after killing Abel, was cursed, and his descendants became symbols of human corruption. In contrast, Seth produced a lineage that upheld the worship of God, culminating in Noah. The original sin had a direct impact on these generations, bringing suffering, mortality, and separation from God. Over time, the lineages of Cain and Seth intermixed, intensifying the degeneration of humanity and leading to the flood. The mystery surrounding the descendants of Adam and Eve stirs deep questions as they gave rise to all the ethnicities and peoples of the world. The Bible presents them as the first humans, laying the foundation for all of human history. They represent the starting point of all civilizations, spiritually connecting every individual to the divine creation. Their choices shaped the destiny of their children and consequently the future of all humanity. One of the greatest mysteries about Adam and Eve is what language they spoke in the Garden of Eden. If they were the first humans, what language did they use to communicate with one another and with God? Moreover, what happened to that language through the generations? The continuity of this language remains a mystery. Did the descendants of Adam and Eve still speak it until the flood? And after the great flood, did this language survive among Noah's children? Was the linguistic confusion at the Tower of Babel the final point for this original language? The Bible suggests that the language of Adam and Eve was directly given by God, possibly the divine language, the same one used by the Creator to communicate with them. Some believe that this language was not just human, but angelic, the same spoken by the angels and used in heaven. If this is true, it could have been a perfect language, incomprehensible to later peoples. Considering these possibilities, there are various theories regarding the primordial language. In this video, we will explore these hypotheses and examine the biblical interpretations that may help us unravel this great mystery of humanity. One of the most defended theories is that Hebrew was the original language spoken by Adam and Eve. Many scholars believe that this language was preserved through the centuries and used until the days of Moses, being the sacred language of communication between God and the people of Israel. Indeed, Hebrew is one of the oldest known languages, with roots in the Canaanite languages, and written records dating back more than 3,400 years. However, its origin still raises questions, especially since it is classified as a Canaanite language, which raises doubts about its true antiquity. The problem is that if Hebrew were the language of Adam and Eve, it would have had to emerge before the formation of the Canaanite peoples. Furthermore, Abraham, considered the patriarch of the faith, was born in Mesopotamia, an area where Sumerian and Akkadian were spoken. This suggests that Hebrew may not have been his original language, making it difficult to assert that it was humanity's primordial language. This topic sparks intense debates among linguistics and theology scholars who question whether Hebrew was truly the first language of the world or if it developed later as a linguistic development within the Semitic context. Another widely debated theory is that Aramaic was the original language spoken by Adam and Eve. Some scholars and rabbis argue that this language not only was the first to be used by humanity, but also was spoken by Noah and his descendants, preserved across generations. This hypothesis gains strength from the fact that Aramaic is one of the oldest Semitic languages, closely related to Hebrew and Arabic. The linguistic structures of these languages share common roots, raising the possibility that Aramaic existed before the separation of the Semitic languages. Additionally, in Jewish tradition, the Zohar, one of the most important texts in Jewish mysticism, mentions that Adam and Eve spoke Aramaic. If this information is true, then Aramaic could be considered the primordial language of humanity. There is also a theory within Judaism that proposes that the language of Adam and Eve was not purely Aramaic or Hebrew, but rather a fusion of both, called Shan HaKodesh, or Holy Language. This view suggests that God gave a unique and sacred language to the first humans, which later fragmented into various Semitic languages. The continuity of Aramaic throughout history strengthens this theory, as it was the language spoken by many prophets and even by Jesus Christ. Thus, the idea that Aramaic was transmitted through time and remained in spiritual contexts is a compelling argument for those who support this theory as an explanation for the original language of humanity. Among the hypotheses regarding the language spoken by Adam and Eve, some scholars suggest that Akkadian could have been the primordial language. Akkadian is one of the oldest known languages, part of the Semitic language family, and spoken by the ancient Assyrians and Babylonians. Its cuneiform writing system is one of the earliest written records in history, leading some to wonder if this language could have been the first spoken by humanity. Another theory points to Sumerian, the language spoken by the Sumerians in Mesopotamia. Sumerian is unique, as it does not belong to any known language family, making it even more mysterious. Considering that Adam and Eve, according to the Bible, could have lived in a region close to Mesopotamia, some researchers speculate that the Sumerian language may have been the original language of humanity. There are also those who defend the idea that Adam and Eve's language was ancient Egyptian. Egypt was one of the longest-lasting civilizations in history, and its language, recorded through hieroglyphs, was preserved for centuries. For those who support this theory, the antiquity and complexity of ancient Egyptian could indicate that it has roots in the first language spoken by humans. Regardless of the hypothesis, the influence of ancient peoples on the origin of languages is undeniable. Akkadian, Sumerian, and ancient Egyptian are among the oldest recorded languages, and their existence reinforces the possibility that one of them may have been humanity's first language. However, despite all these speculations, there is no concrete evidence to confirm any of these theories. The Bible does not explicitly mention what language Adam and Eve spoke, leaving this question open to interpretation. Furthermore, the lack of written records from Adam's time prevents any historical verification. Thus, although these theories are fascinating and based on linguistic studies, they remain in the realm of speculation, without definitive support in scriptures or archaeology. The most accepted theory among scholars is that Adam and Eve spoke what is called the Adamic language, a primordial language that does not resemble any known language. This language is believed to have been directly created by God and given to the first man and woman as a perfect means of communication. For this reason, it is believed that the Adamic language did not evolve from any other language and is unique in its structure and purpose. Furthermore, some argue that this language was more than human. It was, in fact, the very language of the angels. According to this view, the language spoken by Adam and Eve was celestial and continued to be used by God and the angels in their communication with humanity. This spiritual connection strengthens the idea that the Adamic language was not merely a common means of communication, but a sacred language, After the flood, Noah and his descendants were responsible for repopulating the earth, and some believed that the Adamic language was still spoken by them. This led to the language also being called Noah's language, supporting the idea of its continuity until the confusion of languages at the Tower of Babel. The Bible suggests that this language was the means by which God spoke with humans before the multiplication of languages. In the New Testament, the Apostle Paul mentions the language of angels, highlighting that without love, even this celestial language would be useless. This reinforces the view that the Adamic language may have been a divine means of communication, lost after the separation of humanity's languages. The Bible reports that the language spoken by Adam and Eve was removed from the earth after the event at the Tower of Babel. Before this, all of humanity spoke a single language, enabling full communication among people. However, God decided to intervene to prevent the plans of men to build a tower that would reach the heavens. As a consequence, he confused their languages, making mutual understanding impossible and forcing the dispersion of the peoples. This event, described in Genesis, is considered the moment when humanity lost the original language, replaced by the linguistic diversity we know today. The confusion of languages at the Tower of Babel was a direct action of God to prevent humans from advancing in a project motivated by pride and self-sufficiency. Unable to understand each other, the group separated and migrated to different regions of the world, giving rise to distinct civilizations and cultures. The multiplicity of languages was a consequence of this event, with each group descended from Shem, Ham, and Japheth being uniquely affected. Each people received their own language, making communication between Noah's descendants impossible and creating language barriers that persist to this day. This moment in biblical history is considered the milestone of the cultural division of humanity. The impact of this event was immense, as it explains the existence of thousands of languages and dialects scattered around the world. Since then, peoples have needed to develop their own means of communication and translations to interact, making linguistic diversity a central factor in human history. The episode of the Tower of Babel not only interrupted universal communication, but also resulted in the creation of distinct identities among the peoples, shaping the course of civilization. The Adamic language, which supposedly allowed direct communication between men and God, was removed and replaced by many languages. This event marked the end of the unique language and the fragmentation of communication, making interaction between peoples more complex. From that point onward, humanity began to deal with language barriers, a challenge that remains to this day. The removal of the original language represented the end of an era and the beginning of the diversity that characterizes the modern world. I thank all who watched and invite you to share this knowledge. Biblical languages spark curiosity and reflect divine intervention. May God bless each of you and guide you in wisdom. We will meet again in the next video for more discoveries about the Bible and its history.